Alrighty, welcome back. For those of you who are new here, I'm working on a roguelike called Dive to Depths, which is releasing next year. Today I just want to go over a bunch of the new items that I've made, some status effects, and how on-hit effects work in this game. So if you've played any games in the past with items, such as League, Risk of Rain, any roguelikes, you would know what on-hit effects are. But if you don't, here's a quick rundown. On-hit effects are sudden effects that only happen when you hit something. These on-hit effects tend to be a really big defining factor of the item or the weapon, and you will usually only get them if you plan to, well, hit things a lot. Now there can be many types of on-hit effects, but in my game there are two. Melee and general. General on-hit effects can be triggered on any hit, so this can be your weapon ability, your items, blah blah blah. On the other hand, melee on-hit effects can only trigger if you hit something with your primary attack on your weapon. Alright, with that out of the way, I'm gonna dive a bit into code. If you don't want to see that, you can skip ahead. And if you are still sticking around, I'm gonna talk about events. Now, what is an event? An event is basically whenever something happens. This can be as simple as moving, clicking a button, etc. Now, events will come in really useful when you're making stuff like on-hit items because you can just have an on-hit event. And you can have every on-hit effect just subscribe to the event instead of being called individually. Now, what do I mean by subscribing to an event? An event, in C# at least, is basically a collection of functions. Whenever that event is invoked, every single function within that event will also be called. This means that instead of just calling every single function one by one, you can just do event.invoke and everything's done. Simple as that. And that is exactly how all my on-hit effects are triggered. All the items get subscribed to their respective events at start, and when they need to be called, the event is invoked. Now, certain on-hit effects aren't exactly guaranteed, instead they'll roll for a chance to get triggered instead. Now, as you get more items, your proc chance obviously goes up. But the thing is, every single item has its own way of scaling its chances. Some items stack linearly, some stack exponentially, and some stack logarithmically. Now, linear and exponential are pretty simple, but what does logarithmic mean? That basically means that stacking the items will give you diminishing returns on your proc chance. So for example, if an item has a 5% chance of triggering, the first stack might give you 5%, the second will give you 4, the third will give you 3, 2, 1, etc. The reason some of these items will scale logarithmically is because otherwise they will be completely out of control. Let's take these two items, Crystal Resolve and Lucky Conch. Both of these basically just effectively reduce your damage taken, but they are both chance based. Now if they were linearly stacking, well, you just won't die. Let's look at the Lucky Conch again. So it gives you a 5% chance of dodging attacks. But if it was linearly stacking, once you get 20 of them, you are effectively invincible. And you just win. So yeah, that's how stacking works. Now items can be triggered in various different ways. Some on hit, some on hurt, some on dash, blah blah blah. This allows for some really interesting item synergies to happen. For example, here's the Voltic Fin. It allows you to shoot a bunch of projectiles whenever you get hurt. Now obviously, having to get hurt is a big problem. It can make the item pretty unreliable. So what if you could hurt yourself? Well, here's the Neurotoxin. Neurotoxin poisons everything including you in a small radius. And since poison is a damage over time effect, your Voltic Fin will get procced from every single tick of the poison. This basically allows you to sacrifice some health for some really major damage. Now if we look at the Echoing Coral, which shoots a ricocheting projectile, every single time the projectile hits, it may trigger an on-hit effect, so it synergizes very well with all your on-hit items. Now there are gonna be a bunch of synergies just like this. Some maybe not as explicit, but that's for you to figure out when the game comes out. But as of now, I'm gonna leave you with a bunch of item overviews, and Happy New Year! Have a good one!